I think when the government puts businesses out of business, then somebody needs to help pay for at least some of that. But it's the wrong government. These decisions are being made by governors. Governors are shutting down businesses. The president hasn't shut down a single business in the country. These governors are. And then they're running to Washington, D.C. saying, we need you to help us with our budget. We need you to make us equal. Cuomo just does this all the time. He didn't buy enough ventilators. He bought solar panels. Somebody has to give him ventilators. He didn't have enough beds, he said. Somebody has to give him beds. Our budget's not going to be in sync. Somebody has to make up the difference. All he wants is the president, Congress to keep bailing him out. And then it turns out, of course, and his so-called medical experts way overestimated the number of ventilators they're going to need, the number of beds they're going to need, and so forth and so on. He's an incompetent fool. That's what Cuomo is. He hasn't prepared for anything, and he's never going to prepare for anything. Meanwhile, he has 87% popularity rate in New York. Why? Because of exactly the reasons Milton Friedman just said. People want to hear this stuff. The governor's fighting to get them this stuff. The federal government needs to bail out the budget. The federal government needs to bail out these bad decisions. This creates a disincentive for governors and state legislatures to make the right decisions. It creates a disincentive to get your budget priorities right in the future should there be another pandemic, because they just figure, you know, McConnell and the boys and girls and Pelosi and the administration or whatever administration will come through and bail them out. There's no real rational thinking going on right now, really. And it's very, very concerning to me, because one day the bill will come due. It always does. It may not happen today, it may not happen tomorrow, but it may happen in 3, 5, 8, 10 years. And when it does, it's going to be a hell of a bill. And how do you control inflation? It's extremely painful. Now, some of us are old enough, a lot of you are old enough to remember the last years of the Carter administration when inflation, interest rates were through the roof, and the havoc that it created on your savings, on your pension, on the value of your home, on the value of your income. It attacks the currency. It attacks the currency. There's just too much cash out there floating around, liquidity, if you will. And as we get a little later in the program, I'm going to explain this in more and more detail. But it has happened to us, and it's happened to us in a relatively recent past. 1980, 1981, 1982, 1983, we really didn't come out of a very, very deep recession after the Carter years and the early Reagan years until Reagan put the brakes on deficit spending, until Paul Volcker, who oddly enough was appointed by Carter, put the brakes on easy money. Now, we've had quantitative easing in this country, that is almost 0% interest rates to the banks and other lenders, for 10 years. And so the Fed started to kick it up a little bit. The president was hammering them, don't do that. And now we're back to where we were before. And the Treasury Secretary, who's a liberal Democrat out of Goldman Sachs, in my view, he's probably an FDR New Deal Democrat, he thinks this is swell. He said the other day, over $4 trillion that the Fed can push out there into the economy. Over $4 trillion. They just spent $2.2 trillion. Before that, a couple $100 billion. Today, McConnell's talking about getting through a fast $250 billion to $350 billion bill. Nancy Pelosi says it needs to be $1 trillion at least. On top of that, they're talking about a $2 trillion infrastructure bill. What in the hell do you think this is going to do to the currency, to the value of the dollar, to the value of your salary and your investments, your IRA and your 401k, the value of your home and so forth? And then the tax consequences when the value goes way up. It's meaningless. And yet you're going to pay higher taxes, or you'll be in a higher tax bracket. This is the problem. And we wrestled with this several decades ago, and we finally wrestled it to the ground. This is unnecessary. You want to help small businesses? You want to help the American worker? The way you create jobs is to create jobs. The way you create businesses is to create businesses. There is no need for a vast amount of this attack on our economy